I mean, it's been an amazing run on these officers and the different roles we've been talking about. It keeps getting better and better. And I really love today because we have super fans coming out of the woodworks to talk about how they've optimized their character experiences. And of course, as much as we have creators and writers on the show, you know, Continuing Missions is all about the super fan. That's what I am. I'm a super fan. And giving them the spotlight to talk about why Star Trek is so wonderful. So we're so happy to have you all here today. My name is Michael DeSmeet, freelance writer for Star Trek Adventures, blogger on Continuing Missions, which is the #1 fan site for Star Trek Adventures, going live since 2018, going strong. Jim, why don't you introduce yourself, and then we'll get to our wonderful super fans.
Yeah, sure thing. My name is Jim Johnson. I'm the project manager and line editor for the Star Trek Adventures RPG, published by Modiphius Entertainment. Love these many years, 7 years, going on 8 now, or 6 going on 7. I've lost track. But having a lot of fun with it. Co-host on this here show with Michael. Love these many years now. Actually, no, year plus, 60 something episodes. Yep. There's Sky's Kitty. Yay! There's Riker. Hi, Riker. Yeah, that's me. I'll introduce our guests and have them introduce themselves, and we'll encourage them to tell us who their favorite security/tactical officer is all across the franchise. So Sky and Riker, why don't you introduce yourselves?
I'm Sky. This is Riker. The tactical officer I played was Lieutenant Talis Stelich of the USS Cassini and Dorian. She was awesome to play. I'm a super fan, and this is my cat, who is a super cat.
Can I ask, does Riker step into the kitty box like this?
He lays in the kitty box. He's a weirdo. Yeah, you're a weirdo.
You've got to train him to do that.
And got his own maneuver.
And Sky, who's your favorite tactical / security officer?
Yeah, favorite tactical officer. That's tough. Because there are so many good ones. I'm actually going to go with Tuvok because I love Vulcans and the Vulcan lore, and I love how they do a lot of things with like the duality of Vulcan nature versus, when he has to be like violent to do his job. So.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. All right. And Anton, introduce yourself and tell us who your favorite security / tactical officer is.
Hi, everyone. I'm Anton Abrahamsen. I play the character of Lieutenant Commander Klaus Zaroth. She's from the Quick Start, and I've started out with her, and she's evolved over time, and just love her to death. And my favorite security officer, I would say, is probably Odo. I just really enjoy the duality, Odo, and all the different things that he embodied for both the Founders and the Federation and Bajor, and just a character between every single world.
Mm-hmm. Nice. And before we just jump into the episode, Michael and Anton, how about just a quick 30-second spiel? How did we get Anton on the show? Like, was it just like an opportunity, or
one of my favorite ways is Anton watches Continuing Conversation. I think he saw the one about chief medical officers or captains and was like, hey, you know what? I played a tactical officer. If you like to talk to me about it. I'm like, yes, that's what we're about on Continuing Conversations. So we're always asking people to step forward and tell us their Star Trek Adventure story. So I ask if you have good audio video setup and you don't mind keeping your language to PG-13 so that my nieces and nephews can watch this back, you're welcome to come on the show.
Awesome. I love it. More super fans. We need more. And we still got a bunch of roles to talk about. So if you're out there playing one of those cool roles, reach out. Let us know. We'll get you on because we love everybody. It's a big Star Trek family. We're always happy to welcome more into it. So,
Jim, your favorite security tactical officer?
Oh yeah. He said, "Oh no." Oh, you're asking me?
Yeah.
Oh gosh, there's so many good ones. Sky, it's the same problem. Like there's so many good tactical security people. Like I like Reed. I like Odo. I like Non. I like Worf. Worf is a challenging character, but like his role as security and tactical was really cool because you got to see a lot of different things that he had to do. I even like Tasha, Shax. Gosh, I don't know if I can pick up. I think I'm going to go with Odo. Odo is such a great character, not just because he's the constable, but I think Odo did a really nice job of really trying to play the middle. Right, he tried to be objective. Like between the Federation and the Bajorans and the Cardassians, he always tried to like not pick sides as much as he could, and I really appreciated that about the character. And even Rene Auberjonois' performance, right? Like you could see the tug of war happening sometimes, especially with when his love interest with Kira increased. Like he still had to be the bad guy sometimes, like and get her in trouble and stuff. So yeah, I think Odo probably is my favorite. How about you, Michael?
Yeah. So for me, I'm going to go back also I have to do a correction for first officer. I had said Una, which is true. I like Una. And I'm only saying this because of the hilarity that you just mentioned, Shax. If I would have thought about it, I think I would have gone with Jack Ransom as my current most popular first officer right now. I love the guy. He's always taking his shirt off, showing his abs. I want to aspire to be like that one day. But no, okay. So for security officers, I'm going with Leon Noonien Singh from Strange New Worlds. I find her extremely intriguing. I find her more than capable for the position, and I'm dying to see more of that character. I like that. Whereas Worf was dark and brooding and Odo was dark and brooding. I mean, she's got dark and brooding down. I mean, the woman can kick Gorn butt. And so I'm really looking forward to seeing an expansion on her character. That's my favorite, Jim.
Mm-hmm. Cool. All right. So if you fans who've been watching for a while, you're familiar with the format for this particular mini series within the series. We're taking each of the roles in the game and blowing it out into its own episode. Again, I think we may have done this a while back, Michael, when the Player's Guide first came out, but we're going even deeper now, and we've got more guests to join us here to help us facilitate this conversation. And so tonight's episode is all about the security/tactical officer, what the cool things are that this role brings to the table, why you should be playing it, why you want to play it, what kind of fun you can have with it, all the cool stuff you can do about it. So just, open season. Anybody who wants to jump in, tell us about your experiences playing a security officer or a tactical officer, and why was it just such a cool game opportunity for you to get into?
Yeah, Anton, you want to start as our new guest?
Sure. So I was suggested to take the security officer's role because the group that I joined didn't have one at that point, and they were. So I've been told we're getting their butts kicked sometimes. So I joined the group and took the role, and I quickly fell in love with the game. And I love all the different mechanical nuances with spending momentum and spending threat, and look for a way to make a very effective character, both in combat and out of combat. And it was just very interesting to see how the different disciplines could really direct the way that you want to take the character. So, like, for example, if you've got a high security and a high command, that would really lend itself well to an investigator kind of role or an interrogator. And like you pick any like secondary role for a well-rounded character, and that kind of tells you what kind of character this person is going to become over the course of their career.
Yeah, and you're playing an Andorian. Did I hear the name correctly?
Yes, I'm playing an Andorian.
Oh, that's my favorite.
That's funny. I was one too.
They're so good. They're so good.
Aren't they? You have Ushan as a talent, I hope.
That is one of my talents, and and I always use it non-lethally. It's like as funny as that might seem, with a very bladed weapon.
That's so cool. Okay, good to see how you were voted in to do it, but you're enjoying it. And Sky, what about you? How did you end up with your security character?
I mean, pretty similar story as Anton's, I joined the Cassini Project campaign because my GM for the Dauntless campaign, where I played the Helm, XO, and CO, they were playing in a game as a Klingon science officer. And they're like, we don't have a tactical officer. Our tactical officer is an NPC. And, you know, they're like, you should come play with us. And so I did. And I took over that NPC, and that's Talus. And it's interesting because I actually got to write her backstory when everybody else's backstories were pre-written for the game, because we were all amnesiacs at the start of the game. So very interesting.
And then I have to ask a question to Anton, because you said you took the character straight from the pre-gen character sheet. Did you make any adaptations to it at first or over time?
Over time, I did. We were using the Klingon book milestone rules. So like I would be able to switch a talent or add a focus or add some stats to kind of like where I saw her going. One of the things that I loved immediately and kind of informed me who this character was her focus in Klingon opera. So we were able to work that into the game, and like it just got me thinking about like what kind of character is this, and who would her friends be? What does Andorian music sound like? Like all these different questions would pop up in my head, and like I felt helped me make a more rounded character. And as I was progressing with the different milestones and things like that, I felt like she was growing as a character as well, becoming more competent and becoming more focused and more of a leader to what she's actually going to become. She's going to become the first officer in the game.
Oh, good. So you have an arc planned. In the absence of Al Spader being here, who wrote the chapters on roles, I'll let Jim take it. For your intention for Chief of Security / Weapons Officer, because we know that the title changes according to the Star Trek era. But Jim, what was your intention? What did you want to highlight when Al wrote this chapter?
Yeah, I mean, like the other roles, I encouraged Al to write the chapter in such a way that really emphasized why is this role such a great role to play as a player, and to think about like your tendencies as a player. What kind of things do you like to bring to the table? What kind of things do you like to do? Right? Like, are you primarily the frontline person who's out there, doing the fisticuffs or the range combat, or are you more the tactical thinker who likes to like strategize and plan things out? Like what kind of things do you like to do in a game, and what do you want to bring to it? And then how does that map onto the Chief of Security / tactical officer, et cetera. And, again, like I said, I wanted Al to make sure that each of those roles, like somebody would read it and go, oh, I've got to play this role, or, oh, I've got to play that role. And then like really force them to make a choice, because all the roles are awesome, depending on how you want to play with them. And we have, great thing with Star Trek is it's a 56-year-old property. We have no shortage of great examples of tactical officers, security officers to draw from, like, so you could emulate Worf or Non or Shax or whatever. I mean, there's so many great examples to pull from that like you can just start there. And especially as a new player, right? If you're not that familiar with Star Trek, not to say you're going to be playing the fighter, right? And it's an easy intro into the game, but like tactical officers doesn't have to be that complicated initially, right? You got the phaser. Your job is to protect the crew, right? Like more, for first and foremost, you're protecting the ship. You're working the weapons on the ship, or you don't have to be, but you could be. And then you're on the away teams with the protecting everybody there, right? That's your things. Like they're doing their job. Your job is to keep them safe so that they can do their job.
Yeah, I really like the take of what Odo introduced to the character as a forensic specialist, as an investigator, and I really love watching in our game, because we're not a pew game. Very rarely do we engage in violence to that level. Like there's not a phaser shootout every episode. So we have a Zapnorm as a security officer, which is perfect because they're strategists. Strategy is one of their biggest things. So they're trying to outthink their opponents before it even gets violent. So I'd be really curious to hear what advice Sky and Anton would give to people. Maybe they're coming in from a different system like Star Wars or Dungeons and Dragons, and they think, oh, I'm going to pick security officer because I want to be the toughest person on the ship. But really, give us some advice for new people coming in, how to really optimize it in the Star Trek environment.
Oh, goodness. So I actually really struggled with this position because I had found my element so well in my other character. And so I really struggled, especially since we were all amnesiacs. So I didn't really have an idea of what this, and I didn't create her. So I didn't really have an idea of this character's voice. But what I would say is if you're going to do a tactical officer, do not feel like you are beholden to the ones we see on screen. Because as you were saying, we've got a lot of dark and broody, like tactical and security officers. So like Talus kind of eventually evolved to be kind of goofy, actually, kind of a goofball. And, you know, and I think that was me trying to figure out where the voice of the character was, even though, you know, she is the you know, badass on the ship. You know, don't be afraid to take it in a different direction. And especially if you're coming over from something like Star Wars, okay, this is not Star Wars. You know, you can't be a, as we call them, murder hobos. So like you've got to figure out how to play within kind of the Star Trek rules, this like to keep it Trek like. And because like I remember bringing someone in from who was more familiar with Star Wars, and she was just like, "What do you mean if I bring a bladed weapon with me, we're gonna like generate threat?" Like.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So you know,
Exactly.
like you know, it's and so you kind of have to like, you know, figure out where that balance is. But I really like the security officer from a standpoint of there's actually a lot to play with that hasn't been done. So,
yeah. What about you, Anton? What was your take on that?
So in our game, we don't do too much combat. It's like every maybe few missions or so. Mm-hmm. But what I found is that when there is combat, the combat is usually very deadly, or it could be very deadly because not everybody has a ton of stress. Mm-hmm. And I feel like my character's responsibility is to try and incapacitate the opponents as quickly as possible. And I feel like threat is the security officer's best friend.
How so? Talk to me about that.
That's with the talent bold security. So then that allows you to generate a lot of momentum for when you get a hit, and then hopefully be able to dump some of that momentum into an attack if needed to try and like incapacitate somebody. So, but that's from like the tactical point of view. But the other point of view that I've had as the character that I initially struggled with was, what can I do when we are not doing combat? And then I was leading into the other focuses I had, which are the other talents, the other abilities that I had, which were command and con were also pretty good for this character. So she would be a very good helper. She would spend her time helping with the shuttlecraft. She would spend her time helping with persuasion with the first officer, like helping them back up, trying to negotiate and in situations like that. So I found that she was learning from these other officers and then getting better at them herself.
Sounds a lot like the for people who maybe watch the TV show, it's like a Tuvok, where try the peaceful solution, and once it's not, be ready for action. Which I thought
always try the peaceful first.
Yeah, that's really cool. And plus, I mean, the security officer is the bodyguard for the captain, really, right?
Captain doesn't come down too much in our game.
Okay, then for the first officer.
Yeah, no, our captain was in the muck all the time. He was crazy. But yeah, no, so and I really like doing the security officer for a lot of reasons, but one of them is also you can kind of find a niche for like what they're good at, and Anton was saying that the combat is really deadly, and that is especially true in like ground combat. So I found that I actually drew on my martial arts experience, because I am a martial artist and a martial arts instructor. And that was another way that I leaned into something I already knew to figure out what this character was about. And
Sky, you're one of the most interesting people I know, just so you know.
I
for those of you who are watching,
jack of many trades,
for those who are watching last week's show, Sky is also a licensed pilot. Okay, so I'm just like, you are like the ultimate person I want on my bridge.
So it was just, but it's so difficult to play that kind of physicality in the ground combat. So, especially without generating tons of threat by having a bladed weapon.
Let's give people ideas of what they can do, though. So with a go round, when it doesn't come around to actually fighting or something like that, I think, for example,
command was my second biggest stat. So I actually ended up doing a lot of mean mugging. So I was talking about what I was trying to do, but then what I ended up doing was just like, I kind of did a lot of intimidation rolls. Which
let's think about
kind of what I use that command stat for.
Right. Well, let's go around too and talk about some other things we've actually seen security officers do through the show. We know Chekhov was sitting at navigation, but he was actually security also. So yeah, he was doing some stuff like that. But I think about every away team pretty much needs a security detail. We know they were red shirts back in the original series. They didn't do too well and had to change their shirt colors eventually. But I think about just getting down and surveying, whether it's you're beaming down to a colony or onto a station, who's out there patrolling for booby traps and just making sure it's safe for maybe secondary teams to come in, right? That's a security officer role. Jim, what about you? If you think about something that's non-combat that security officers do almost every show.
Yeah, I mean, you just highlighted it. Sending a security detail down to a negotiation site or to some sort of thing that's going on to kind of like scout the area, get a feel for it, touch base with the local security, and then tell the captain, okay, whoever's beaming down, you can safe to beam down now. But one of the first images that came to mind was the security officers who were tasked to guard the storage compartments in Trouble with Tribbles, right? Like those poor schmoes, like, okay, there might be Klingons on the station, so go guard the storage compartments. So they're just down there standing there with their phaser on their hip, waiting for something to happen. It's like the Marine Guard in front of the White House, right? You gotta be ready for anything.
And
you don't
Kirk's just like, what's the point?
Yeah, but what I like about that is it leaves security officers to have certain interactions and observations of VIPs and guests or others that other characters might not have. What other things, Anton and Sky, non-violent that you've seen security officers be really good for and why they're useful every episode, every game?
So one of the things that I was leading into with this character growth was her ability to start doing investigations. So I would add a focus called sleuthing. I think it's a fun word, and it could help me when I'm looking for like discrepancies in the logs or discrepancies in footage, because she would be like focused and narrowed in on all that. Then there were other things that she would do that would maybe be, she'd work on like computer systems and getting into security backdoors of firewalls and things like that they might have in the future.
Nice. Good. That's done almost every episode, right? Trying to hack a computer and get past the computer firewall somehow.
Which is that's interesting because a lot of that computer like hacking stuff is a science role. So like it kind of goes back to what we had been talking about, like, you know, the con versus engineering roles. Like if your reasoning is that like, oh no, this has to do with the flight system, so I'm going to use my con instead of my engineering. So it's like, it's interesting because it's like, okay, I want to hack this system to get into the security. So I want to use my security for this, not science.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And we see that a lot of that. And I think also, I know in the game or in the player's guide, it was called Chief of Security, but in Voyager, we saw this become Chief of Tactical, and TNG too. So tactical actually expands on that security role in some interesting ways, I think. And especially when it comes to plotting enemy strategies, right?
Yeah, I think we saw that when they figured out a way to get Worf onto DS9, right? They had to give him something to do that wasn't Chief of Security because they already had Odo, and they certainly weren't going to get rid of Odo. And so they were like, well, what do we do with Worf? Well, let's promote him, and then let's put him in red, and then let's make him the strategic operations officer. So now he's not really the Chief of Security anymore. He's got this other role. And then so that now he's more responsible for like tactical things and like, okay, the Dominion War is potentially brewing. So like tactically speaking, how do we, approach this? And, he had other connections and things going on, but it was just a different approach to security, right? Because he was still very security focused and minded, but it was different from like the day-to-day protecting the ship and Picard and everybody else on the ship. So it's just, it gave them an interesting way to give Worf different things to do that were still kind of in his wheelhouse.
In what ways could a Chief of Security also deal with the crew and their antics? Have any of you experienced that? And what role a Chief of Security plays in that? Some great B plots, I imagine, could happen.
Yeah, I mean, the best example is the most recent game I ran, the Chief of Security. And this was also kind of a meta game conceit too, because we were trying to figure out, okay, our game has been going on for 30 odd sessions now. You've managed to talk your way out of every single fight I wanted to throw at you. And so we've been playing this game for over a year and a half. We haven't done a single fight really. Mm-hmm. I was just convincing with the Chief of Security and, or the player of the Chief of Security. And he's like, well, how about my character? Like we open up with a scene of me running a holodeck simulation, running the characters through a fight scenario. And I was like, well, that's perfect. That gives the players a chance to learn how to do combat in the game, or to refresh their memory on how to do it, and also gives your character something to do that's in your wheelhouse and is interesting. So honestly, that's low hanging fruit, but it worked because Anton, it's just funny to hear you say that you're not a very fighty show. It's like the vast majority of Star Trek Adventures players I've talked to or I've heard from, like they're just not doing a lot of combat. And it's not, certainly not the system's not bad at it, right? I mean, the combat's perfectly effective. It's lethal, and like you highlighted, Anton. It is very, very easy to get maimed or badly hurt, but it's like somehow that Star Trek vibe has gotten into people to where they're finding the diplomatic path, or they're finding alternate ways of not fighting, whether it's a fleet engagement or personal combat. It's fascinating. Maybe I'm just not listening to the right conversations. Like I'm sure there's groups out there that are happily getting into melees and battles and stuff week after week. Especially, I probably have to, not to be stereotypical, I'd probably have to listen to some of the Klingon campaigns that are out there.
Those are a little bit more action. Yeah, we're talking Starfleet at this point. And to your point, though, I do want to say though, Jim, even when you're running a holodeck fight, because we've done that on ours, I noticed that the players stage it so they talk about something going on. Yeah. So it's really nice. It just creates a different setting. They get to fight a little bit, but they also get to resolve some stress issues or to work stuff out. Anton or Sky, did you have other things actually, Anton, you had said it. I think Sky, now I'm losing track of who said what. Are there other ideas of what a security officer could do regarding ship antics, things that might go on the ship as B plot?
I could throw someone in the brig, I guess, but I haven't yet.
Yeah, the intimidation roles, like I was talking earlier, and and I think that's part of the reason why I started playing Talus as a little bit of a disarming goofball, is because like she really liked to crack a joke to kind of break tension. So people are kind of doing this and she would just be like, hey, like, did you notice? Or, just crack a joke or something. And it like to try and relieve the tension. And I also would roll basically command type of role on that kind of thing, just to try and like ease things back. I think was kind of like my tack on that.
Yeah, what I would suggest too, I know I do it with my players, is, I know it's not going to be a pew-pew game. Maybe we're doing a diplomatic mission or a first contact or just something, way out there science. And so I'll create a B plot of antics where maybe they're responsible to babysit the new VIP who happens to be mischievous. Or maybe the cadets are doing something scandalous and breaking rules and it has to be investigated. Or maybe someone let something loose in the cargo bay and it needs to be caught. So there's always something to do where the security officer, really, that would be their job. I think about the person who patrols the mall. And so it's just, give them that vibe sometimes.
Just a segue.
So again, I have, for some reason, no problem keeping everyone busy every story. And even if they're not fighting and even if they're solo going about it, they get their own spotlight as a B or C plot. And I think there's just, I could just imagine, I just know, all of us have gone to high school. All of us are at work. All of us have gone to malls, and there's just so much security issues constantly going on in even the most boring of place.
Right.
That the security officer could actually have some really fun answers. I actually look at Odo and how he was always chasing after Nog or Quark.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah. You think about like the Enterprise D, like how big of a ship that was. And like everybody had pets, right? There were dogs, there were cats, there were all kinds of animals on that ship. And like, you gotta think they got out from time to time. And like, there's always nooks and crannies and access ways and hatches that are open. And like, I'm sure any number of security officers probably had to like trudge through the Jeffries tubes, finding the damn gerbil or the dog that got away again. And it just wants to play. Right. And then you can add in the whole science fiction element, right? There's a mischievous, alien animal of some sort that's gotten onto the ship and you got to track them down. Not so much the tribbles, but just, how do they get into that? And then you can even get into like, spaceborne entities. There's a mischievous glowing thing. And I think Lower Decks has done this a couple of times. There's a mischievous glowing thing on the ship that's trying to, absorb everything. And then you make it small and it gets whiny or whatever. But, yeah, there's a lot of antics you can get into.
And what is the securities officer? Again, I'm trying to, for Anton and Sky, thinking about if you get the chance to create narrative, or if you've already done this, like investigating romantic dalliances or discovering a romance that didn't want to be discovered, but you thought it was a security issue, but it was something else, right? Mm-hmm. Anything like that you've infused into the game?
I can't say that I've done anything like that. But so something that my character discovered was that our first officer had been a Section 31 agent. Ooh. And like with a really shady past. But because we were all amnesiacs, we didn't remember any of that. So like, she was just like, is this really who you are? And the security officer's like, I don't know. or the first officer's like, I don't know. So it was just interesting, playing it from that perspective, because like, everybody, we were kind of finding out about ourselves, because it was like everything about us was super classified. So not even Starfleet could tell us what we were. Yeah. And, so finding all these little things out. So, and of course my character is part of figuring all of that out. And
Anton, what about you? Any antics?
Yes. So we were talking about support characters that we could add to our ship. And I had suggested Ezri Tegan, because we're in a time period that's before Deep Space Nine. Oh. So this would be, we were retconning that this would be her her first posting on our ship. And Anton has always had a crush on Ezri Dax. So I kind of wanted to pursue that in character.
Okay, cool. Antics. See, and I think that enriches the characters too, right? In that point. So the security officer is really, in my opinion, right up there with the first officer, the doctor, and the counselor, and knowing the crew super well. But from the security point of view, like who could be a potential threat? Where are our weak points? And the training that they could be giving weaker officers might be very interesting. Never a reason to be boring. And then going again for security and tactical, normally it's the security officer who's firing the photon torpedoes, right? So what kind of advice in playing that, can you give when you're not necessarily trying to blow everything out of the sky? What are some of the challenges that players will have choosing it for space battle, choosing a security officer for space battle?
So what we do is we always try to take out the enemy's engines first, and hopefully de-escalate things after that. So like now you're at a disadvantage. Let's talk some more.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, definitely. Or bring shields down. Go for shields, engines. Yeah. Unless it's like a battle where we're like actually in a battle, like wartime type battle. That's definitely, I think, the go-to 1-2 punch.
Yeah. My advice I've given to my players too is know that you have more weapons than just phasers and torpedoes. You also have tractor beam. You also have deflector array, which you can get super creative with in ways to non-lethally take care of problems. And it's really the responsibility of the weapons officer to know all of those systems, even how to use them in conjunction with the transporter and stuff like that in order to shields, in order to really save the day. And I've seen some people get bogged down like, oh, weapons are down, photon torpedoes and phaser arrays are down. Let's spend all our time and energy repairing them. Wait, you probably have some functioning systems that could change the day. So know those components of the ship.
Well,
right?
and if you have a science officer, lean on them too for those types of things, because that's also their purview.
Yep. Jim?
I'd even take it a step back. And I think I'll echo what Al said, last episode is think about what kind of tactical / security officer you want to be and really look into the depth of talents that are available in the game and like pick those 4 talents to really kind of like mold how does your character even approach a tactical situation? Like are you focused on the weapons and the photons and that kind of stuff? Or are you more of a big picture kind of like, positioning and tactics and, maybe even getting into like tactical mind games, like the Cardassians, they're like their whole tactical philosophy is this, and they're most likely to be doing this. I think about like the Jack Ryan and Hunt for Red October, right? He knew Ramius so well that like he could tactically think, okay, well, he's going to do this, and he's going to do this because of this and this, and his whole backstory and all this knowledge. That could be a tactical officer, just from a different angle and perspective. So I'd say really think about your talents and your focuses too, right? I know Al would really push to make sure you got some cool focuses, and between your talents and your focuses, that'll help shape how your character approaches different situations. So certainly you'd have the deflector shield and the weapons and all that array of stuff at your disposal, which are ultimately tools. But then you've also got other tools that you can draw on to think about.
Yeah, I like the optional rules that were laid out too in the GM guide, where if you need to, for narrative purposes, change your talent or focus during the game. If your game master lets you do that during the game, because it may all of a sudden impress everyone. If your Andorian character, it's funny that Sky and Anton both have them, all of a sudden is also an expert in Tellarites and how to argue with them and says, hey, can I swap out for this talent or swap out for this focus right now and enriching my character? Because I think about all the ones that like are on the screen behind me right now, plus the ones we've seen. Sometimes you find new stuff about them. They're like, whoa, oh, that's so cool. And no one argues it. No one on those shows says, well, that wasn't one of their focuses that was written in Memory Alpha originally. No, they don't do that. They just roll with it. So you could do that in game. Scott?
Yeah, that's actually something that we did, having played Amnesiacs, is that we had these like very like blank slate kind of character sheets. And so like, it would be like, oh, I've discovered I'm really good at this, kind of finding things out about themselves. So I really liked doing that.
I like that creation and play. Anton?
So if you're somebody who wants to be flexible and is interested in the security role, I would suggest being a Trill, because they've got that ability that they can make something like one of my past lives had this up on the fly, and then, perhaps they really like that aspect of drawing upon that talent. And then maybe they'll decide to invest more in that as a focus, or invest that as a direction that they want to go with one of their stats.
Smart. Jamie, you're laughing.
I was laughing only because this is so. This is how this happens on every single episode, I swear. Anton talking about how awesome Trills are, because you have that ability to pull in past lives and past histories and have a moment in the game to do something cool based on your character's backstory. It just made me realize that now that we're doing these episode by episode breakdowns of each individual role, we might want to think about doing episodes that are focused on specific species and why those species are so cool to play in the game. Pulling from the lore of the show and also pulling from the mechanics of the game that Nathan and all the writers had built in. Like, what makes a Trill such a cool character to play? Well, here we go. Here's an hour riffing on that. The challenge with that though, Michael, is
I'm making notes right now.
There's so many species that we could pick. I mean, there's at least 60 in the game now. There's probably more, and we know that there's hundreds in the franchise. So I'm a little.
We'll knock out. We'll do it like our riff.
Maybe 2 per episode, maybe.
With 3, yeah, we'll like 20 minutes for each, so 3 per episode. Good idea. I love that idea.
Since species is such an important component of anybody's character, I mean, certainly role is important, but your species is very important too. I mean, that shapes who you are more than anything else. I think that would be a great mini series of episodes too. And it's funny, Michael. I remember you told me a few months ago that you were worried that we might run out of topics. And it's like, nah, we just need to start riffing. We need to riff with people, get new fresh faces on the show, and start talking to them and just listen to them. And all these branching ideas start flying off, right? And we'll be doing this show forever.
What I really like about it too is when I hear people talk about which species they're choosing to play, they bring such a wealth of diversity to these characters that the shows don't have time to. Like, why not have an Andorian Trill? Like things like that. I hear all these different things happening out there. So I think that's a really good idea. Sky?
Yeah, no, so being an Andorian tactical officer, chief of security, you have this want to kind of fall back into like Shran kind of. And that's why I was really having a difficult time with her at first, is because I was just like, I don't want to be that. I don't want to be what's expected. So, playing an Andorian was not necessarily something that I would pick because I don't know a lot about them. So it was definitely difficult, but I think, as I went on, getting the feel for an Andorian was a lot of fun. She was not chilly.
And I think that that's, again, as humans are diverse in so many ways, it would be very stuck up of us to think that other species aren't equally, and that's one reason I love exploring Klingons, because they're passionate about everything. So why can't one be passionate about vegetable compote, and make that their war cry, whatever they want to do. So we need to talk more about these characters for sure. All right, let's do another go round on why people should choose the security officer and weapons officer. Since Anton, you had jumped in as a super fan to say, hey, I want to talk about it. Let us give people that elevator pitch as to why this might be the character for them.
If you enjoy playing a proactive character that has a clear role in what they're intended to do for the ship, and is willing to branch out from there when that is not always the option. When you're not always fighting, you'll start learning from the other characters, and then maybe you can grow as a character and explore different ideas. that's the thing I've loved about this character the most. It's been the process of growth for her, and where she was to where she is now.
Yeah, and I like what you said too. I want to just reemphasize it: is lean into that second highest discipline, and why is that their second highest discipline, and go in that direction. And of course, we always talk the game master has a responsibility to know your character also, and to design games that highlight those idiosyncrasies. Sky?
Yeah, so if you want to play a character where you're not really sure what's going to happen in any given game, the security officer, the tactical is all for you. You could have a game that is dead serious, and then like one next where you are chasing the alien creature through the ducts and it's complete comedy gold. There's opportunities for slapstick, but then okay, no, we got to get down to business. We got to, we got to fight the bad guy. So it's definitely a role that I found where it's like I had no idea what to expect any given game.
So sweet. Yeah. I'm going to just say that, you can really talk with your game master ahead of time at session 0 about what type of game you're playing. If you're playing session 31, you're going to be dealing with a lot of espionage, secrecy, that could be very scary kind of thing. Or you could even say, hey, we're playing a lot of time travel. So you're a temporal, you work for a Department of Temporal Investigations and that kind of security role. So you're maybe constantly staring at screens and chronometric things to look for breaches of the time stream. So again, it's really up for the team to get together and create this at session 0. Or if you're introducing a character, talking with your game master, it's like, what's the arc of my character to make sure you get involved completely in every episode. Jim?
You just gave me a great idea for a character. Oh man, just another one, right? Like I'm playing a campaign. You are a DTI operative, but from the future.
Yeah.
You are secretly sent to the past to serve on this ship because something's going to happen and you don't know what it is, but you're convinced, but you can't blow your cover. And so you are the security officer, but you're also secretly a DTI agent in the far future or something.
Well, what's deep about that is you could be a DTI security officer, but you go in to be the helm or the medic because you're inserted, right? So you're going back to Anton, you're double talented in that way, but you're in an undercover role. Ooh, that's good, Jim.
Yeah. Sorry, I was just riffing. But yeah,
I've done undercover type role playing in STA, and it's so much fun. It's so much fun.
Yeah.
Especially when you can't afford to get caught. If you're on one of those missions where you're in a pre-warp society or something like that.
Right.
Oh, wait. Now, okay. Right before Jim, your final words, I didn't even talk about how the security officer has a responsibility for those kind of pre-warp incursions, including duck blinds and all that stuff. So that's a good point. Like these away missions to pre-warp, they have to be specialists on culture so many times. Oh, good one. Oh, nice.
So much stuff. Yeah.
Right.
I would say, thinking about, role players and gamers and people new to Star Trek, new to the game, like, I think security / tactical is a great role kind of like on board because like Anton said, you have a very defined role, right? You are security, you are tactical, your job is, probably to protect the crew, protect the ship. You have an instant in for every single away team mission. You are almost guaranteed to be involved in every episode in one capacity or another. If there's a chance for a fight, you're going to be right there in the middle of it. If you're going down to a planet, you're going to be right there with the crew because you're going to be protecting the commanding officer and the rest of the people so that they can do their science job or their engineering job or whatever. And like the con officer last week, I think tactical really lends itself nicely if you want to play a junior officer, it gives you the opportunity to advance in rank and advance in experience, and to also give you a feel for like what other roles you want to go into. Certainly Worf is a good example of a tactical officer who eventually, took command, went into the command track. You could do that. You could lateral into operations and become an engineer. Maybe that would be an interesting spin on things. So if you're a little tentative about some of the other roles, I think tactical is a safe choice, even though you have a chance to be in a lot of very unsafe situations. But again, you're just thinking about the mentality of certain players who want that opportunity to advance their character, level up, do more stuff, and maybe get some flexibility in what direction their character goes in. There's a lot of growth potential for a tactical officer or security officer. And we are blessed with 56 years of Star Trek history. There are lots of great examples to pull from. So don't be afraid to watch some episodes. Even Prodigy and Lower Decks. I love Shax. I think it's just he's such an extreme example of what he can do.
He's like Animal from the Muppets running a ship, security on the ship. I think
it's like a caricature of a security officer, but it really works.
I think also, Jim, for a different show, we'll have to talk about how security as a chosen track could lead you into an admiral level campaign also.
Oh, totally.
Because all of them are attacking tactical and strategy from a different level. But that would definitely have to be a whole different topic.
Okay, write it down. Don't forget.
I'll do it right after I give my gratitude and send it around.
Star Trek Thrawn, is that what we're talking about?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Lord. Oh Lord!
Or even as a little bit of a spin, a tactical officer who is always super focused on like the immediate, stuff, but then gets into a position where they have to think more tactically. They have to think more broadly, and like how do they adjust their thinking to like where they were focused on the trees and now they have to look at the forest? How does that change their perspective and their values?
Yeah, so true. So true. Build these characters wisely with weird idiosyncrasies and have a game master willing to explore it. There will never be a game that's like anybody else's game. So do that. Cool. So it's time for the gratitude shout outs now. Of course, I'm going to lean on the brick and mortars. I had 2 votes actually for that came in from Charles Ash and Xenophon J. Garcia. Love the name Xenophon. And they both voted for Imperial Outposts. One person said in Phoenix, Arizona, that a big Trek fan owns the store. So we love that, to hear that. And then Xenophon mentioned Imperial Outposts from Glendale, Arizona. So I'm not sure if they have 2 locations or not, or if they're talking about the same store, but either way, I'm sure it's probably the same owner. So good for you for loving Star Trek. All right, let's pass it around to Sky, then Anton, and Jim will close gratitude.
Well, Glendale is a suburb of Phoenix, so it could be the same. But anyway, yeah. So my gratitude always goes out to all of the GMs that I've had. And I'll shout out Brian, our GM for Cassini Project, and the rest of the crew of the USS Cassini. It was a fun game and I miss you guys.
I would like to give my gratitude to Michael Freeman. He was the one who invited me to join his game at the beginning of the pandemic, which was a great thing that happened to me. It was a great way to connect with other people at that time when really weren't seeing too many others. And I would love to give gratitude to my mom, who got me into Star Trek to begin with. I remember being like 4 years old and watching the original series on PBS, which is a station out here in New York. And just falling asleep, staying up way too late from like 8 to 11 o'clock at night.
And we didn't even ask you what your favorite show and favorite character was because you're a first-time guest. You got to tell us.
My favorite show? That's hard. That's really hard. But it's got to be Deep Space Nine. Okay. But my favorite character has got to be Saru, because Saru has been one of the most interesting characters to watch grow from the start of the Discovery to where he is now. And he's had like the sweetest romantic relationship. He's had this wonderful captaincy where like he was baking the steaks, but he was learning from them and just was gentle and kind and encouraging. So it's like just a wonderful manager.
Oh, I love that. Love that. All right, Jim, take us out.
Man, so I mean, I could go on for days about gratitude and thanking everybody. I think, this is another episode idea, Michael. I know I talked to you about it on Facebook the other day, but we've got to do an episode about the emotional, psychological benefits of RPGs during the pandemic. Obviously, in particular, Star Trek Adventures, but I'm sure there are a number of people that we could pull on to to be in that episode, and not so much be serious, but like be really heartfelt and talk about all the benefits that being in isolation for so long and finding a way to play this game online, and how well this game translates to playing online would be worth an episode or two at some point.
I think so. Yeah,
fun to talk about. But my gratitude is for all the actors who've played tactical officers over the years on Star Trek and on other shows. We have no shortage of examples of characters who could be in the tactical mode. I think of all the NCIS series, all the spy shows, all the 24. Kiefer Sutherland certainly could have been a tactical officer of some sort. So all the thanks to those actors, all the writers involved in creating those characters. And then, as always, my thanks to Sky and to Anton for being here and for being super fans and so supportive of the game and willing to spend your time with us, geeking out and talking about Star Trek for an hour about all the stuff, doing a really deep dive into the role and into the game and into the franchise, just showing your love that is reflected over here and over at Michael too. So thanks to the fans, because I say it every episode and I don't say it enough, and I need if I could figure out a way to say it more, I would. But the fans are the lifeblood of this game, and you are all so supportive of each other consistently, week after week. I see it on all the different forums that we're on. You support everybody else getting into the game, and it's such a great time to be involved in the game because the support structure is there. Modiphius can do what they can do to release new stuff, but it's the game that keeps it's the fans that keep the game going. And I am humbled and gratified to see that we have such a healthy fan base. So gratitude to all the fans always.
Awesome. All right. The conversation continues on future shows as we go into some of the few roles left. Can you guess what they are? You'll just have to stay tuned and see. Until then, IDIC.
Live long and prosper. Be safe. Be well. Take care. We'll talk to you soon.